What's up, you guys? Jalen Hawk here, as always, bringing weekly anime manga reviews, and this is going to be my video of me explaining Kagunes, Kagune types, and all that type of stuff. Now, one thing I do want to say before I begin this video, or actually a few things I want to say before I begin this video, is that I have done this video before on my other channel, before it got terminated, obviously. So if you saw the previous video, or if you just read the Ghoul story in general, you probably don't need to watch this video, so you can skip out on it. But if you do enjoy my content, just hearing me talk, or if you are unsure or whatever, I would appreciate it if you watch this video, give it a like, you know, all that stuff. It really does help me out. But besides that, in this video, I am going to be covering Kagune types, explaining how they work, what they're strong and weak against, all that stuff, but I'm not going to be covering Kakujas too much. I'm going to do a very brief description of a Kakuja. I'm going to make a separate video entirely explaining that, and the same thing when it comes to RC cells in general, that can warrant its own video. But besides that, let's hop right into this video. So, Kagunes are very simple. They are the predatory the weapon that ghouls use in order to fight against humans or other ghouls. It comes from the kakaho, which, to make it very simple, the kakaho is simply an organ that ghouls possess that humans obviously don't. They are capable of storing the RC cells within the kakaho in order to produce the Kagune, which has been, I guess, made akin to a liquid muscle by some investigators and obviously some some ghouls within the Ghoul story. Now, when it comes to the kakaho, depending on where it's placed throughout the body, it can showcase the Kagune to appear in various different ways. Now, obviously this is a factor on where the kakaho is placed and also your own imagination, but obviously, to a degree, it does kind of, like, it's limited to a degree, unless if you're Kaneki, whereas you either have all 4 RC types or you are capable of using your Rinkaku Kagune in order to mimic the other RC types, but I am personally on the fence where I believe he does have all 4, but that's a debate for another day. Now, obviously, there's 4 RC types. You have the Ikkakus, the Kokakus, the Rinkakus, and the Bikakus. Now, obviously, you can be born to have more than one RC type. This has been showcased with several ghouls throughout the story, such as Nutcracker, and Hinami, and also Shikore, and potentially the child of Kaneki being Ichika Kaneki. We do not know for a fact if she is indeed one, but she might definitely be. So, besides that, now getting into the like the specifics of each RC type, you have the Ikkakus, who are personally my favorite RC type, and by far the most versatile of all 4 RC types. They have several different abilities that seem to be only akin to them, and they also seem to have their own versatility when it comes to the way how they're capable of manipulating their Kagune alongside of the Rinkakus. Now, let's explain the Ikkakus. I am going to save the Kagune abilities for the end of this video, so wait for that. I'm not going to get into the Electro Kinesis here, but the Ikkaku seem to have the most change in form when it comes to appearance regarding all the Kagune types. You have where they have several different stages of their Kagune that they are capable of going into, and it seems like when it comes to some of the stamina drain and all that stuff, when it comes to the RC type, it seems to vary from person to person. Now, the Ikkakus have showcased to change their form from a gaseous state, which, mind you, I do want to bring up that the way how some Kagune types seem to work is very similar to the way how matter works in the real world, where obviously the atoms and the cells within a molecule, if they are very tight against one another, and you know, it's a tight area and they're not capable of bouncing around, it forms a very solid like appearance, which is very similar to the way how Kokakus work. If there's a lot more room and the atoms are able to bounce off of one another, you obviously have a gaseous appearance similar to the way how Ikkaku wings work. And if you have where there's like a little bit room in between where they're capable of kind of moving amongst one another, you have more of a liquid form, which you do see with the more lines of like the Rinkakus. But if you look at Ikkakus, you have where Ikkaku Kagunes are very odd because they have a gaseous-like form where it's more on the appearance of a wing. In some ways, it even looks like a flame to a degree. and they're also capable of changing their Kagune to form something more on the lines of a Kokaku-like blade, which we've seen characters like Ayato and Takizawa capable of doing. And you also have seen them where they're capable of forming a Kagune, like a normal Kagune-like structure from their back, very similar to a Rinkaku or even a Bikaku from their upper back, and we've seen this with the case of someone like Yomo. And you also have seen where they're capable of changing their Kagune to a crystalline-like form, which we've seen from characters like Ayato and Toka. So the Ukkakus are definitely very odd. Now, another ability that Ukkaku Kagune seem to have is the capability that they are capable of changing the form of their Kagune in order to produce RC shards from their body. Now, this seems to only be the case from the gaseous-like form, which we've seen Toka be able to use in order to shoot, RC shards. We've seen Toka and Ayato both do this, and we've also seen where in the crystal-like form, where it's like a crystallized wing, has also showcased to be able to produce a variety of several different shards regarding, varies from, the range and the overall size of the shards. This has been shown as well. Now, moving on, or I guess one other thing I do want to bring up when it comes to the Ukkakus that I do find very odd is the fact that Ukkaku Kagunes have showcased many times that they have a very bad stamina drain. Now, this has been the case because of the fact that their RC type, the Ukkakus, since it's more of a gaseous type of appearance, they're constantly producing RC cells, which causes them to drain their stamina considerably. And because of this, you have where they are very quick, very light on their feet, and that's why you see like a lot of Ukkaku users tend, for the most part, obviously there are exceptions like Amon or Yomo, where they're very large hulking men, and even Banjo. But you have where a lot of times they're very light on their feet. They're not extremely muscular. They might be more on the lines of toned or very lean. And you see this in the case of Ayato and Toka, obviously, and even Hikari. Now, going forward to what I said before, the stamina drain, it seems like the stamina drain seems to vary from person to person. In the case with someone like Toka, her stamina drain seems to be very consistent, and a lot of times in the story, you see where even though she's very light and very nimble on her feet, the thing that causes her to lose some of her fights is the fact that she gets outlasted by her opponent. Now, when it comes to this, it seems like that by hardening your Kagune and not constantly using shards throughout the fight or using Electro Kinesis throughout the fight, you can overcome this weakness, which has been showcased by ghouls like Takizawa and also Ayato, or you can just overall train in order to build up a resistance to your stamina drain, or just build up your stamina in general, which we've seen with the case of someone like Yomo. So, yeah. Now, another thing that we also do know is the fact that Ukkakus are strong against Bikaku users. Obviously, this is not always the case, because we've seen where Toka has struggled fighting against someone like Mutsuki. And you also have where Ukkaku users are weak to Kokaku users, but like I said before, this is not always the case, where we've seen Toka be able to completely annihilate someone like Tsukiyama, who's a very proficient Kokaku user. So let's move on to the next RC type, because I spent a lot of time talking about the Kokaku. Now, the Ukkaku. So Kokaku is probably by far my least favorite out of all the RC types. They're not really that versatile. It seems like that the Kokaku seems to be located like around the armpit-like area, whereas the Ukkaku Kakaho seems to be focused more on the shoulder. But you have where the Kokaku seems to be a lot more defensive. They usually form their Kagune into shields or spears or some type of bladed weapon. You have where Tsukiyama was able to manipulate his Kokaku to wrap around his arm and form more on the lines of like a ribbon, and even use it similar to that of a drill, which is pretty cool within the Tokyo Ghoul story. Now, I will say that usually Kokaku users are slower, but there are exceptions to this rule, like in the case with Ure, Tsukiyama, and obviously Naki, but they're usually the most tanky of all of the RC types. They're the most defensive, so I guess if you had to kind of give it this RC type more on the lines of something akin to like a Pokemon typing, these would be the rock types or the steel types of this universe. They're very tanky, like I said before, they're more defensive, and they're more meant to be taking very quick attacks from, for example, Ikkaku users, but this is not always the case, like I said before. And that's just kind of it when it comes to the Kokaku Kagune. There's really not a whole lot to talk about, mainly because there's not a whole lot of users in the story, and also because they're not really that versatile compared to the other RC types. So let's move on to the Rinkaku, debatably the strongest of all the RC types, and it even has its own unique property in healing. Now, obviously, it doesn't really matter from what it seems like what your RC type is when it comes to the aspect of having healing like abilities. It seems like by cannibalizing enough, you can end up having, you know, a healing factor to a degree. But Rinkaku Kagunes in general are more known to have this healing aspect to them, and you even have where some of them are known for their overall healing, like in the case with Rize, but she's more of a special case, and she has her, like, she's interesting enough to warrant her own video, which I will do eventually in the future. But besides that, a lot of the most predominant, strongest characters in the story seem to have the Rinkaku Kagune, whether it is confirmed or not. It seems like it comes from there. Like in the case with Kaneki, obviously the main character of the story has the Rinkaku type. You have Rize also has the Rinkaku. Psycho. Uta has been implied that he has a Rinkaku, though this is not confirmed. You also have where the Yasuhisa twins also have that, but that's because they get their Kakaho from Rize, just like how Kaneki and Furuta also do. Kane also has this RC type, and you also do see that Jason has this RC type, which we all do know. If you read the manga, the anime does not showcase this as well, obviously, but in the fight between Kaneki and Jason, Kaneki brought up the fact that the main problem with him beating Jason and the main difficulty that he was having when it came to fighting him was the fact that Jason, not only was he very tough, it was also the fact that he was constantly healing as Kaneki was attacking him. So, yeah. Rinkakus are by far probably like one of the most terrifying RC types they can go against, because a lot of the time, just because you think that you kill them doesn't necessarily mean that they're dead. So yeah, that's kind of scary. Now, Rinkakus are also seem to not really have the same weakness as all the other RC types do, where, for example, Ikkakus are known to be fast, but they also have stamina. Rinkaku users, a lot of the times, because of the fact that they are so versatile, or not necessarily versatile, but the fact that they are kind of in the middle of the body, like, you know, the Rinkaku is obviously located like in the mid-back region. You have where a lot of the times the people who are Rinkaku users are very fast, like in the case of Kaneki. They have very high regenerative capabilities. They are very defensive due to their change in Kagune type, and they just kind of have like the best of all aspects. So debatably, when it comes to kind of rating which RC type is the best, I would say it's definitely between Ikkaku and Rinkaku when it comes to that. But besides that, Rinkakus are strong against Kokakus because of the massive amounts of blows that you tend to see Rinkakus do. And also the fact that they are weak to Bikakus due to the fact that since the Rinkakus literally gets the name of kind of like a liquid muscle from it, based off of the way how they look, and they look the most muscly out of all the RC types, thus Jason's appearance when he goes into his half Kakuja. You have where they're considered very soft in comparison to other RC types, and Bikakus are able to cut through them very easily. Now, another thing that I do want to bring up, though, when it comes to Rinkakus before we move on, is the fact that Rinkakus seem to be the most versatile when it comes to changing shape, because some of the people who have showcased to change their shape in Kagune the most proficiently throughout the story, such as Kaneki, Donato, and Psycho, happen to all be Rinkakus. So, if I had to be honest, I'd probably say that Rinkakus out of all the types are by far probably the best when it comes to versatility. Or, I mean, not versatility, but when it comes to Kagune manipulation. So, yeah. Now, moving on to the final RC type, Bikakus. This is probably my second to least favorite as well. There aren't that many users of this type. The only prominent ones I can think of off the top of my head is Noro, Mutsuki, Nishiki, and obviously Yumitsu Tomo, aka Kobin, Little Bin, the younger sister of the Bin's brothers. You have where this, I guess, would be more akin to the normal type in Pokemon, if you had to put it in those terms. You have where this is by far the most balanced out of all the RC types. They don't seem to really have any drawbacks, nor do they seem to have any type of really big advantages besides against the Rinkakus, but they also lose the Ukkakus due to the fact that they're not as fast as them, but according to statements made by characters in the story, this is probably the second fastest out of all the RC types, but they're not as fast, obviously, as Ukkakus. Now, that's kind of it when it comes to that aspect of them. Now, let's actually hop into the other aspects of Kagunes, more focused on Kagune abilities and things that people have been showcased to be capable of doing with their Kagune. Now, like I said before, I'm not going to get in too much when it comes to the overall aspect of Kakujas, but by cannibalizing, you can make your Kagune stronger. Whether you're focusing it completely on your Kagune or focusing it on developing a Kakuja at some point, cannibalization can increase the RC cells to a point where your Kagune does end up causing a mutation and developing a Kakuja. But your RC cells can also manipulate or mutate your Kagune to the point where it does change form to something a lot more grotesque. Now, one thing that has been showcased within the story multiple times, and this has even been stated, the Kagune is very odd. Most Kagunes tend to have eyes on them, and usually the eye area of the Kagune showcases that there's a large buildup of RC cells in that one area. This has been showcased with characters like Hinami, this has been showcased with characters like Kaneki, this has even been showcased with a freaking massive monstrosity that is indeed Dragon. Now, Kagunes, from what it seems like, one thing that I've noticed most Kagunes have in common when characters happen to cannibalize a lot, not just like a little bit, they tend to either lose features in their Kagune in general, thus no longer making them unique, like what we've seen in the case with someone like Uta or even someone like Amon, where both of their Kakujas look very similar. And you also have where a lot of Kagunes end up developing mouths on their Kagunes as they cannibalize more and more. This has been showcased in the case with like someone like Kaneki, like Furuta has showcased that he develops a lot of eyes or mouths on his Kagune. Eto has also showcased this as well. It seems to be a very prominent thing of, people who cannibalize. Now, continuing on though, some of the unique abilities that Kagunes have been showcased to either one RC type in general or seem to be focused more on the lines of like a bloodline. For example, Tatara's bloodline, we don't really know what his RC type is as of yet. In the anime, they do showcase him seemingly being a Bikaku, but in the manga, it has not really been shown, unfortunately. But Tatara has the ability where he's capable of heating up his RC cells to the point where they combust, thus forming pseudo-pyrokinesis and producing flames from his body, mainly from his mouth region once he goes into his Kakuja. Now, it has been showcased that it looks like that he can also do this from his base Kagune, based off of when he was starting to develop his Kakuja. Right before it activated, he was producing a flame from his shoulder region, so you can assume that Tatara is also capable of doing this to a much smaller scale in his normal Kagune form, in his base form, I guess. You also have where Ukkaku users, mainly of the Kirishima bloodline, technically it's not the Kirishima bloodline because that's not like I'm just going to call it the Kirishima bloodline, even though some of the people who happen to be part of this aren't necessarily part of that bloodline, but are part of that family, if that makes any type of sense. So people like Toka, Hikari, and also Yomo all have showcased the fact that since they're all Ukkaku users, are capable of electrifying their own cells in order to create Electro Kinesis. Now, this is a pretty cool ability within the story of Tokyo Ghoul, and probably one of my favorites, but this has only been showcased with people related to Yomo, so I'm not sure if all Ukkaku users can do this, or if anyone who's just related to that family is capable of doing this, but it's only been showcased with Ukkaku users, like I said before. It is unknown if someone like Ayato or even Ichika are capable of inheriting this ability, but you can assume that Ayato, with training, if you decided to train with Yomo, probably could do this, as well as Ichika if she happens to have the Ukkaku RC type that she would inherit from her mother Toka. But yeah, anyways, moving on. Now, another ability that has been showcased with, this doesn't seem to be in particular with one RC type, but it has been shown with a few people within the story, is, healing. Some people are capable of healing with their RC type. Now, it doesn't seem like that this is limited to only one RC type, like I said before, because Banjo has an Ikkaku Kagune, a very small one, but he is capable of healing. We do see him heal his own wounds, as well as heal the wounds of Akira midway through the story. Obviously, this did leave a very big buildup with RC cells within her body, and they had to get suppressants in order to kind of like heal her up. But people who are capable of doing this are able to heal both humans and ghouls by manipulating their RC cells within their body, and obviously speeding up their own healing process, which is a pretty useful ability to have. And I guess people with this ability would be considered, I guess, the white mages of the group. This has only been showcased with very few characters in the story, only being Nico and Banjo, but they both seem to be very prominent at doing this ability among the people that I've been using it with. So yeah. Now another ability that has also been showcased is capable of face manipulation or just cell manipulation in general. The only character that we've seen in the story be able to change their face entirely by manipulating the RC cells on their face is Uta, and a character who has showcased in order to make themselves look a lot younger in the story than what they actually are, but by manipulating the RC cells in their body, is Roma, who happens to be, I believe, 52 years old when she has the appearance of someone who is in their late teens or early 20s. So I also think that's very interesting. Now, when it comes to this, though, I've seen some people say that not all ghouls can do this, though I beg to, like, I completely disagree with this. I think any ghoul who has manipulations of their RC cells to a degree are capable of doing this. For example, I'm pretty sure by the end of the series, Kaneki could probably do that if he really wants to, but instead he decided to actually age like a normal person. Same thing with characters like Yoshimura. I'm pretty sure could have done that if he really wanted to, but he did not. And Kaiko seems to probably do this. Well, Kaiko's actually a half human, so never mind. No, he can't do that. But I'm pretty sure any schooled ghoul can probably do that if they really wanted to. But instead, they allow themselves to age like ordinary people. And from what it seems like, just because you get older as a ghoul, it doesn't seem like that hinders your body at all. Because characters like Donato, who's a freaking old man, has showcased the fact that he's one of the fastest characters in the series, despite him being really old. And even someone like Kaiko has brought up the fact that he would have to bring an entire army just to take on Yoshimura, despite Yoshimura looking very seasoned as well. So that's also a very interesting thing. I'm not sure if they're using their body, the RC cells in their body, in order to enhance themselves to prevent, cellular deterioration or muscle deterioration, or if it's just the fact that ghouls just have a very better resilience when it comes to age than humans do. I'm not really sure. But another ability that is there, and yes, I know I'm going through a lot of abilities, but I only have 2 more left, so just sit tight. Another ability that ghouls have showcased is cloning. This has only been showcased with both Uta and Donato, and from what it seems like, when you do clone, you have to sacrifice some type of flesh in your body or some type of object off of your body in order to kind of produce another clone. Donato has showcased the fact that he's capable of removing his own fingers or even breaking off parts of his Kagune in order to make full-fledged clones of himself. He did this in the fight with Amon, and he also did this in the fight with Ure. Uta has also showcased where he's able to create clones and also manipulate their faces in order to look differently in his fight with Mutsuki. So that's also really cool. And whenever Uta produces another clone, he replaces it with another earring or some type of piercing or gauge on his body. So that's also pretty cool. Now, the final ability, pseudo ability, I guess, that some ghouls have showcased that they're capable of doing is detaching their Kagune. Now, ghouls have showcased that they're capable of either detaching their Kagune in order to form like a Kagune type of wall or barrier, like in the case with Kane, or they are capable of detaching their Kagune to flat out fling it at someone, like in the case with Mutsuki, or they have showcased the fact they're able to just detach their Kagune in order to use it as a trap, like how Nutcracker has, or even how Kaneki has. It's just an ability that seems to be prone to most ghouls who happen to have the Rinkaku or Bikaku type, I'm assuming. But I'd imagine that any ghoul, if they really want to, probably could do this ability. So yeah, besides that, that's kind of all for this video, you guys. Thank you for watching. I know this was really long. I have to admit, my throat is very parched after saying and talking this much, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Besides that, thank you for watching. Remember to comment, rate, subscribe. As always, guys, love you all. Jalen Hawk, signing out. See you guys.